right, last 2 days have been a lot to digest. So let's talk about the worst thing that could possibly happen. When I came here to the Center for Homeland Security and Defense and sat in the classroom for the very first time, this was the notion that was brought into my existence. What is the worst thing that could possibly happen? At that time, I was a commander at my police department, and it messed up all of my molecules. It had me thinking about all of the threats that could behold us, and it absolutely changed me. It changed the way I see the world. I'm still really fun at parties, but now I'm constantly looking for what is the worst possible thing that could happen, the doom and gloom. With that, this is Optimize with Optimism, and I'm going to take you on this journey. So, as she said, thank you for the introduction. I was the chief of police in Aurora, Illinois, not to be confused with Aurora, Colorado, that also had a mass shooting. But I spent 30 years of my career in one department, born and raised there. And I became chief in 2016. And it was during that time that I took the concepts from here into my position as police chief. So in 2016, things were going swimmingly during my initial tenure. Got to put a great team in place. We got to get the department ready for the boogeyman, which may be coming, not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And then in 2019, we had a mass shooting on February 15th. We just celebrated is the wrong word, we just honored the 5-year anniversary of the victims. 5 people were killed. It was a workplace mass shooting, and 5 of my officers were shot running towards the gunfire, trying to take down the shooter. They did a remarkable job that day because of the preparation that they had taken in prior to that moment in time. So then February 15th happens, and once we start healing from our physical wounds, note I did not say emotional because those are still ongoing, then a little thing happened in early 2020 called a pandemic. Maybe you heard of it. And I was trying to lead my department in a time and place that I had never lived in before. And in the early stages of the pandemic, we didn't know what was going to happen sending our officers out into the field. 911 calls did not stop during the pandemic. And so we had to figure that out. And I had to learn how to lead a department during that time of complete and utter uncertainty, something that we had not prepared for. And then once we started figuring out the pandemic like the rest of the world, then a little incident happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that sent ripple effects across the nation of civil unrest, and my city was no stranger to that. My squad cars were set on fire, our downtown was destroyed, people pried up bricks and threw them at my officers' heads, and it was another really tumultuous time. So after 3 years of trauma and ups and downs, I waited for the dust to settle. A good leader never leaves in the middle of a crisis, and so once the dust settled, I got the hell out of there. I retired at the end of 2021, retired on a Friday, and then I moved to Naples, Florida on a Sunday, which I affectionately call the waiting room for heaven. I'm in my 50s, and they call me kid there, and I'm all about it. I've assimilated nicely to the lifestyle, happy hour at 4:30, bedtime at 9:30. It's absolutely remarkable. If you're ever in South Florida, please look me up. We'll break bread together at 4:30. So when I retired, I had a lot of reconciling to do with my profession. I started in 1991 during the riots of Rodney King, and I retired at the murder of George Floyd. And if you didn't look in between those two bookends of my career, you would have thought that policing didn't get better over those 30 years. And I know that it did. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw us get more professional. I saw us get better trained. I saw us get more educated, more compassionate, all of it. And so I was really struggling when I left the police force, and with that, existential identity crisis that I think might still be ongoing. But I sat down and I poured my heart out into, what is now a book. I didn't know it was going to be then, but it was kind of cathartic for me. And since that time, over these last 2 years, I've been going around speaking not only on mass shooting preparation and prevention, but also on culture. I have the great fortune of going into police departments and other organizations across the country, and I do assessments. And it's so great to go into other organizations and identify what's wrong, give them recommendations, and then leave. I'm like, bye, you guys figure it out. But in the course of these last 2 years, having the honor of being invited into organizations, I have come up with some themes that are so interesting because they don't just live in first responder world or homeland security world. It transcends into all professions. And that's the journey I want to take you on today, because the work that you guys are doing is heavy, it's big. And it would be easy to fall out of motivation for the things that you do. So my goal today is to take you on a journey and present to you the business case of optimism. Now, it's going to be a big sell, and I get that. But optimism, in my opinion, provides a competitive advantage to all of us. It helps us to navigate challenges and setbacks with greater ease, to approach problems with a positive outlook, build strong relationships, and stay motivated in pursuing goals. Like I said, this is a very, very tall order. I don't want you to confuse optimism with positivity, because we've heard the phrase toxic positivity. That's great. We're going to visit positivity ever so slightly in this, but what I'm interested in is the difference between positivity and optimism. Positivity is the silver lining. Everything is going to be okay. Well, sometimes it's not. And we in this room know the behind the curtain. We know that it's not. We know the threats, and it's not enough just to tell our people and ourselves to stay positive. That is not going to be enough to motivate and to inspire us. So I posit that optimism is the way to peak performance. Optimism is the belief that we have control over our own destiny and we can overcome any obstacle. We have to believe that. You have to believe that, or you wouldn't be doing the work that you're doing day in and day out if you didn't believe that you were going to make a difference. But we forget that all too often, and that is what has become so transparent to me in the organizations that I visit. So I'm going to try to unpack this in 3 different ways. One is the you version, empowering yourself to stay optimistic so you can optimize your performance. That's one track of this. And it's often a track that we ignore. We talk about empowering others. That's a big buzz term, word salads, empower others. And we're going to visit that because it's so important. And then we're going to also talk about how to build structures in order to empower ourselves and others. So that's the path that we're going on, and I'm going to bounce back and forth. First of all, would it surprise you, the most recent Gallup poll says that over 68% of our employees are not engaged at work. Does that surprise you? It doesn't surprise me. What's worse, I think it's somewhere around 14% are actively disengaged. I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe that's just the curmudgeons, the malcontents. So maybe just the normal amount of disengaged are the 68%. But here is what I know, and this is not just in one field. This is just the United States Gallup poll, the workforce of today. But what I know for sure is that the difference between what we are doing and what we are capable of doing would solve most of the world's problems. Yes or yes? That's the participation part. Okay, fantastic. I'm not going to ask you to role play or anything. So when Heather and I were talking about me coming here and speaking, I said, I'll do it, but I need to get a file on every person who's coming here. So she gave me all of your files. So here is what I know. I'm just messing with you guys. Here's what I know about you. You have within you more resources of energy that has ever been tapped. You have more talent that has ever been exploited. You have more strength that has ever been tested. Now you might say, oh, wait a minute, I think it's been tested, okay, right? But you have more strength that has ever been tested, and you have more to give that has ever been given. So I want to try to figure out what holds us back, because this is true for absolutely all of us. So here's what I've learned, and I'm only going to highlight 3 themes of what holds us back individually, because in talking to people in organizations, this is what I've learned through surveys and through one-on-one interviews, is that there are 3 things that hold people back. One is our critics. I call them, we've got the difference between mentors and tormentors. Our critics that are coming at us internally, externally, you name it, we've got them, right? That's what holds us back. Our culture, our organizational culture, which, by the way, is both positive and negative. We hear so often about the negative culture, but there are so many positive parts to our culture. We have a culture in many organizations of education and training. Here a culture of being intensely curious, bettering ourselves in our organizations. We have a culture of camaraderie. But there's also a culture, negative cultures in my profession, of the mirrored sunglasses and attitude and trying to fit into that culture. And then it's the authenticity piece, the individuality, which is so trite, and yet it is the thing that holds people back from peak performance. It holds them back from optimizing their performance in their jobs. So those are the 3 things that we're going to talk about, but first we're going to go on a little autobiographical journey. I want you to know that I paid for that spiral perm. I paid good money for it. I know that's what some of you are thinking. This was my first day on the job, the Aurora, Illinois Police Department. I am 18 years old, and I had wanted to be a police officer since I was a zygote. And there I was on that day. First day, and I am so excited to be there. All my friends went away to college, and I stayed back and became a cadet at my police department, which was like an internship. They put me through school, and I got to work in all the different areas of the PD and just soaked it all up like a little sponge. And on Fridays and Saturday nights, we cadets were able to ride along with the police officers. Nobody else could do that. So Friday night, 3 to 11 shift, I would ride, and that would go into midnight shift, and I did this every single weekend. And that is what started the adaptation into the culture of law enforcement. And I rode with officers that I probably shouldn't have. They probably weren't suitable to train. And from them, I learned what I thought was how I was supposed to behave in the culture of law enforcement. Borrowing power from my position, talking down to people, things like that. And it got to the point over the 3 years as a cadet that I lost myself, my personality that I had before I walked into that police department, because all I wanted to do was fit in. I just wanted to be a cop, and so I tried to emulate those around me. And this is what we do in every single turn. In every single organization, we walk in, and it's the whole fight or flight phenomenon. Who's going to harm us? Who is safe? And we don't want to stand out too much, so we try to fit in. And this is so important to optimizing performance, because there are so many people in your organizations that are doing the same thing, trying to assimilate into an environment that may not be healthy. And what happens when a healthy person walks into a sick environment? They too become sick. So that's what happened to me. It got to the point of which mask should I wear, and I learned about policing from people, again, that shouldn't have been teaching me policing. And this was our culture. Don't smile, just the facts. This was what I was brought into. This was the culture of my department in the 90s, and what I set to change later. As I was sitting back, looking at my career, looking backwards and connecting the dots, there was a moment in my career where I realized that was no longer serving me. I was an officer for about 3 years, and I was on a traffic stop. It was not a life or death thing, relatively routine, if you can call anything routine in policing. And I pulled this guy over and he handed me his driver's license, and I said, "Hey man, you just blew that stop sign." I took his driver's license, I walked back to my squad car, and I started to run him through the computer, and the computer starts buzzing at me that he's got 2 warrants, and he comes up for armed and dangerous. And so I call for backup, and I thought it's easy, I'll just get some backup over here, and we'll hook the guy up and be on my way for the rest of the day. So no sooner do I do that I look up and he has taken off out of his car. So now we're in a foot pursuit. So I call it in and I start chasing this guy. And as I am running, I also want you to know this guy is huge, and every time I tell the story, he gets bigger. So I'm running after him, and I devise the most excellent plan. I had some pretty fast wheels in those days. Now I'm 25 years old, and I'm chasing after this guy, and my plan was very simple. It was just to grab this guy, pounce on him, knock him down, place him into handcuffs, boom, that's the end of it. It's a great plan. So as we're running, we're now through the backyards, and I've lost track of where I'm at. Rule number one, policing, you always know where you are. I had no idea where I was at. So I could hear the radio squawking at me. I could also hear the sirens coming. So I knew help was on the way, but I'm chasing this guy, and I did exactly what I was going to do according to plan. I grabbed this guy, I ran, I pounced, I jumped, and this guy did not fall, nor did he waver in any way, shape, or form. The most curious part of this is that I didn't let go. So if you can picture a baby cop grabbing onto the barrel chest of this man who is running, and we are now running together, and I don't know where we're headed, but I double down. I mean, I just wrap my legs around him, and we are going, and I have no idea where we are heading, and I did not have a plan B in this moment. So it hits me. The reality of the moment hits me, where I think, I don't know if he's got a weapon on him. I'm just, above his waist. And I am blurting out. I just start blurting things out. One of which was, dude, I know you could kill me. I remember distinctively saying that. And I said, but you won't get any street cred if you beat up a baby cop. We'll just take care of these warrants. It was inevitable. Just stop. I won't charge you with fleeing. And let's just call this a day, right? And I sound more articulate than I did in that moment because now it's survival, And so the guy just immediately stops, and I slide down his back. And he puts his hands behind his back, and I take my handcuffs and I cuff him up without incident. I go to grab my radio, it's gone. It had bounced out of my holster while I was riding his back. So picture me leading a man with handcuffs. I'm sorry, he's leading me. And he's like, I think you dropped your radio over here. So bad guy is helping me find my radio. And then he sees it, he's like, here it is. So I grab my radio, and of course I do the subject in custody, in my most badass voice. And we start walking back together. And I said to him, dude, I have to ask you, why'd you stop? You could have beat the crap out of me and just went on your way. And he said, I don't know, no cops ever just talked to me like that before. And I thought, oh, what a concept. We just have to talk to people. That is so fascinating. But I knew what he meant. I knew exactly what he meant. No one had treated him with dignity and respect, and I hadn't done that to the people I had come in contact with, again, because I didn't think I was supposed to, right? And it was after that moment, and this is the stupidest story, and yet it was one that stuck out to me when I was looking backwards at my career as the thing that helped me the most. And as I go into other organizations, I hear this, is that people's personalities are stifled, or they're not able to be their authentic self and show their personality. And it was so interesting. After that moment, I started to really pay attention to the great cops in my organization. And they were the ones who were phenomenal communicators. I blamed it on my size at first and said, I'm of small stature. I've got to talk people into handcuffs, so I have to learn how to talk to people. But I watched really big, bulky cops. One guy named He-Man, who worked the gang unit, and he would walk up to gang members and he'd be like, how's your mom? And I'm like, why are you asking how his mom is? But that's what he did. He built a rapport with them. And I started to study the best communicators. And I started to study those people who brought their personality to their work. And I became a more successful police officer that day because I started to use my skill, my talents, my humor, my compassion, all the things I had left behind. And God forbid, my vulnerability in those moments. And I became a more successful police officer, and then I became a better leader because I realized that those same traits translate into leadership. And that's what holds people back. That is what keeps people from optimizing their own performance. Twofold, leaders hold people back, And then when people feel stifled, then they aren't performing at their very best. So culture is a really key point. I love going into organizations, and the question that I ask is, tell me about your culture. And I get interchangeably culture and morale. It's in the garbage, in the gutter. Our morale's in the gutter. Okay, and these are abstract, sometimes tangible animals, our culture and morale, all of the things. And then the next question I ask, I believe that we have to use all of these conversations and turn them into leadership conversations to change the culture of our organization. So here's the good news, is you can disrupt the negative culture. And it doesn't have to be anyone who has a formal title, although many of you do in this room, some don't. That doesn't matter. You know, you can lead from wherever you are, whatever rank that you are. So I was standing at the front desk of my police department as a cadet, and I was assigned there just working on some reports, separating them. And there's a guy working the front desk, and he is just a crabby man, a curmudgeon. And at 9 a.m., his curmudgeon friends would come in. We called them the coffee clutch. So they would all come in at 9 o'clock for this coffee break, and I was listening to them talk at the front desk. And all they did was complain. Do you see the new promotions? Bullshit. That guy didn't know where he came from. See what happened? That's bullshit. And they're just sitting there and they're complaining about everything. And I found myself kind of bobbleheading, right? And I'm like, yeah, everything is bullshit. That's right. I'm literally just started there. I don't even know who these people are that they're talking about. And I got sucked into it, right? So this guy walks in, this officer. He walks in the front doors of the police department, walks by the front desk. He looks at me, goes, morning, and he says, morning, gentlemen. Would you wake up pissed off about today? And then he keeps walking. And I started laughing because he pulled me out of my OODA loop in that moment. And you know, he took me, he broke that trance of me falling into this negativity. So later, I ran into him and I said to him, I said, dude, that was really funny when you walked in the front desk. He said, listen, kid. He said, be careful. Be careful who you hang out with in the police department. Be careful what you listen to and how you absorb all of that information. He said, those guys that you were listening to, no matter where they go, there they are. And I kind of looked at him and he said, they're miserable in every facet of their lives. And they contribute so much to the negative culture. He said, don't let people tell you who to formulate opinion about. Formulate your own opinion. Make your own decisions. Create your own culture. Carry your own weather. You know, he's like, you'll hear people, the morale in here is crap, right? Carry your own weather. And I thought that that was the wisest information I could have ever received, and I carried it with me throughout my entire career. That is a disruptor who had no formal authority, who just walked in and disrupted that culture of negativity. And that's what I mean how easy it is. But instead, we don't speak up, because that's hard. You'll be ridiculed, criticized, right? So we go along with the negative culture. And that is how we get deeper into the negativity. But the coolest part about our organizations is that creating spaces for people to be their authentic self is about belonging. Fitting in is changing yourself to be accepted in the organizations, all of our organizations. But belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be exactly who we are. And that is how we contribute to our organization. So you have a lot of people coming in new, our millennials coming into our organizations, and I think we're a lot better than we were before about authenticity, but that is what holds people back. That is what I hear about what holds people back. And as I mentioned before, we have the mentors and we have the tormentors. If you are blessed in your life to have someone who has helped you along in your career, man, I wouldn't have any success but for those people who have been there for me as my mentors, as my sponsors. But I have also had my share of tormentors over the years. And I hear this a lot in organizations, is that there's just this one person that's trying to keep me down, or this gaggle of people trying to keep me down, trying to thwart what I'm trying to do. And in these one-on-one conversations, it's almost like a therapy session. I hear about them. And again, I had my own. I had someone who almost derailed my entire career. I was a sergeant for 5 years. He called me in his office, this was a commander, and he said, I want to talk to you about the annual evaluations that you completed on your officers. I had 8 officers in my squad, and he's flipping through them, and he said, your evaluations are so cheerleady, which is very interesting because I was on the bowling team in high school. I was not a cheerleader, so I don't know where that came from. But I kind of looked at him like, what do you mean? He said, that's just a lot of positivity. I said, okay. I said, here's my philosophy. I want every officer that I sit down with to hear that they're valued in this way. Here's your skills, here's your talents, and we're grateful for those. Keep honing those. I said, but if you turn to the back of the evaluation, you'll see that there's areas of improvement. You want to get here, you're here. Here are steps to take that I've given them. One, this guy, he's got low productivity, he's kind of lazy, so we've got some training classes, right? We've got some goals that he's achieving. Next person, she's got a bad attitude. We've got some classes that we're gonna send her to. So I said, I'm curious, why you don't like these. I said, because I'd like them to read these evaluations, walk out the door and not want to kick the garbage can, right? I want to, really build them up. So he says, are you into that empowerment stuff? Yes, I think I am. And it wasn't a good thing. And so I said I was. And so he leaned in over his desk and he looked at me and he said, are you taking the lieutenant's promotional exam? And that morning I had signed up for the exam, and there'd never been a female in the history of the police department to reach the rank of lieutenant. So it was a big deal. Like my palms were sweating when I signed up for it, just built up the courage, signed up. And I said, yes, I just signed up for it this morning. And he said, you will never be a lieutenant in this police department if I have anything to say about it. Whew. That is not optimizing peak performance. Don't do that. If you've done that to someone, stop now. That is not empowering people. And I got up out of that office, and first let me tell you, there's no crying in police work. That's what I was taught. And I've since changed my position. I'll visit that later. But I could feel those tears just building up. I was so mad. But I bit my lip, and I didn't let him see any tears. I got into my car. I went into the ugly cry. And on my drive home, he convinced me not to take the test. I said, this is ridiculous. Why would I take this test? He's going to sabotage me. He has the power. He's got 2 levels above me. What am I thinking? Why did I think I could do this? And then something snapped inside of me. And instead of saying, wait, why me? I went, why not me? Why not me? So I got home and I ordered the books for the promotional exam. Dr. Bellavita says it's only a lot of reading if you do it. I had to do it. And every time I got tired of reading those books, this commander's face would flash into my head. And then I kept reading them. And then I read them a second time, and then I dictated them on a tape recorder and listened to them on my yellow Sony Walkman everywhere I went. And I scored number 1 on that lieutenant's test. And the lesson here for all of us who have tormentors is simply this. If you learn to use criticism as fuel, you will never run out of energy. And think about all the critics that we have. The external critics, the noise, the people not in the arena, who are challenging you, tormenting, everyone, trying to thwart efforts. You have to use that criticism and turn it into fuel, because that is the reserve of your energy. And that is a lesson that all of us need to take. For so long, I wondered why that guy didn't like me. And this has been one of the problems that I've had throughout my career is what did I do to piss that guy off? I don't even know. Is it just my personality? Probably, right? And then I realized that I can't take this personal. First of all, I realized, I don't like him very much either. So it's kind of okay that he doesn't like me. But there's this book. It's called The 4 Agreements, and it's by Don Miguel Ruiz. Anyone heard of it? That book is my Bible, and it's so interesting. When I pick up that book, it meets me where I am every single time. And this is the thing that I've just had to go, this is my remedial journey. You know, all of this is a remedial journey. You're gonna want your money back because I have no credibility in almost anything. This is all the things that I failed at and all of the things that I had to learn and relearn, right? Don't take anything personal. And that is part of the 4 agreements. It's hardly ever about you anyway. If you haven't read that book, it's great. Don't make assumptions, always do your best, be impeccable with your word, and don't take anything personal. And as I said, whenever I revisit that book, it meets me exactly where I am in that moment. So empowerment. You're into that empowerment thing, are you? Yeah, I am. So here's the thing about empowerment. The very definition of empowerment is to give someone the authority or power to do something. That's great, but then it posits that you have to wait for someone to empower you before you do the thing. So I want to push back on that and say that part of empowerment, part of optimizing your performance is by empowering yourself, because sometimes they're not going to be a person that's going to empower you. You know, that moment of being your own disruptor, because there is a little voice inside your head that messes with you all the time. And that little voice knows your weaknesses. It knows your vulnerabilities. It knows everything about you. It's your voice. And yet that is the voice that seems to stop us from doing the thing most of the time. So you have to empower yourself by becoming your own disruptor. That's the key. You also have to build people around you, a team of people. When I said I got to build my command staff, this was such an honor for me to pick people that were so different than me. Not the one in the chair, that is a child. But my command staff was everything that I wasn't. That guy on the left, my deputy chief, was career military and a finance major. Literally the antithesis of everything that I am. We are so different in our leadership. And that is what we don't do often enough, is build a team of truth tellers. And by the way, those truth tellers are the people in your lives. This is the professional setting, but you also have truth tellers in your personal life. I call them my front row. They are there in the front row for me all the time. They are people, the people that are your truth tellers. Call them whatever you want, your front row, your personal board of directors, your Congress. Don't call them your Congress, you get nothing done. Call them whatever you want, but the people that you tap into, and they are genuinely happy for you when you succeed. Genuinely happy. You can probably maybe count on less than 10 fingers, people that genuinely want to see you exceed. Just because people are in your circle doesn't mean they're in your corner. Oh, that's right, that's a retweet. Tag me. So you have to create this team of truth tellers, but here's the thing. The reason they're truth tellers is because they also call you on your BS. They're the people who will say to you, you are not your best today. You are not giving your very best, and we can see it. They challenge you to be better. Those are your truth tellers. What I want you to do when you leave here is to take out a piece of paper, and I want you to write down those people in your life, your front row, that genuinely want to see you succeed. These are your truth tellers, and you have to surround yourself with all of these people, this diversity of thought that will challenge you on everything, because here is what we do. Far too often, we create people in our own image. We promote, we hire people that look like us, that think like us, and that's beautiful because it feels good. You know, that's why we tune into our particular news station, because we agree with everything it says, right? And that's why we have to move out of our comfort zone. One of the things that I learned coming to this institution, challenge yourself, get to the other side. Who are you and why do I believe what you say? That's a matter of absorbing all of that information out there and devising your own ideas and opinions from them. But it is foolish to replicate your strengths and idiotic to replicate your weaknesses. And yet we do that all the time. We can see it in our organizations. So fight that urge. That is going to defy optimal performance in your organizations when people see you just putting the same people in position. So if you are a decision maker, make sure that you take into account that you're bringing people in. So I went to Harvard for 3 weeks through the state and local government program there, right? And I am in this classroom. One of the best trainings, this one and Harvard was one of the best programs to get me out of my programmed mind of law enforcement. Professor Marty Linsky stood up in front of our cohort and he said these words: leadership is about disappointing people at the rate they can absorb. And I remember sitting in that room. I was a commander, not yet the chief at the time. And I remember thinking, this is why people crap on Ivy League institutions. This is ridiculous. This is terrible. Leadership is about inspiration. Leadership is being a visionary. Leadership is taking people where they ought to go, but they just don't know they need to go there. It's your job to bring them over. Share your vision. This is not disappointing people. That is not leadership at all. And then I got into the big chair, got my stars, got my title, sat there, made a decision that pissed off half of the department. And I was like, God bless it, Marty Linsky. Okay, leadership really is about disappointing people at the rate they can absorb. And here is what he meant, and it took me a long time. This is why sometimes the lessons don't hit you in the head until you're ready to receive them. Leadership is about challenging the status quo. We do that all the time as leaders. Leadership is about holding people accountable. That's the tough part of our job, one of the many tough parts of our job. Having courageous conversations with people, holding people accountable. It's difficult. Leadership is about changing the culture, the negative parts of the culture in our institutions. Leadership is about changing policy, new policy, getting rid of policy that no longer serves us. Leadership is about change. Leadership is about satisfying your stakeholders, internal, external, all of it. I knew when my external stakeholders were happy with me, my cops probably weren't. You know? All of your stakeholders, trying to please everyone. That's what leadership is about. Leadership is about new legislation, instituting. It's about malcontents, dealing with the curmudgeons, dealing with bureaucracy. Those of us in this room know exactly what that means. Trying to get something done, but we have so much red tape that we have to go through. So leadership is about doing all of these things. It's uncomfortable. Leadership is genuinely about disappointing people at the rate they can absorb. But there is a litmus test for that to get you more comfortable with disappointing people. And it's very simple. Every decision that you make in your organization have to go through these 3 parts. Am I doing the right thing? And there is an asterisk there. The right thing for the organization. Because there have been many times where I thought I was doing the right thing for me. Sometimes, when I got in that position and I found my tormentors were incurring discipline and I got to impose it and I was moo-ha-ha-ha-ha. And then I thought, am I doing the right thing for me? Yes. For my organization? No, absolutely not. No, it was inequitable. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing it for the right reasons and at the right time? The answer has to be yes to all 3 of those things or you do not proceed. And there are some times where you will go through the first 2 threads. I am doing the right thing for the right reasons, but the timing is wrong. But here's the key component to leadership is that after you make that decision, whether it be policy, legislative, process, system, hiring, promotion, whatever it may be, communicate the why behind it. But sometimes when we get into positions of formal leadership, we don't have time to do that. It's the autocratic jump, how high. There's a place and time for that. most definitely. When the defecation hits the oscillation, we know that we're not going to be asking or telling everyone, here's the why, right? We're going to do it, right? But for the most of the time, 95% of the time, we can communicate the reasons that we have instituted this new policy, this new thing, this new process, this new system. And what I have found by taking the time on the front end gets more buy-in on the back end. So even if people disagreed with it, even if I was disappointing people, they understood where I was coming from. And I've had many people say, I don't agree with you, but I understand how you got to that decision and I respect it. That's okay, that's cool, good, we're good. So we have to be a disruptor as leaders. Every single one of you are disruptors in this homeland security ecosystem. All of us, we have to be. We have to continue the work. But sometimes we have to have the courage to stand alone, whether that is a radical idea, that maybe people haven't bought into yet. Whatever it may be, whatever it is to keep these systems running in the best way that we can, whatever it is that we need to do to thwart the threats, sometimes we have to become disruptors, and sometimes that makes people uncomfortable. And that's okay, because this work is not for the faint of heart at all. This work is important, and you have to be able to disappoint people at the rate they can absorb. So here is what your people want. According to author Daniel Pink, he is written the most recent book, The Power of Regret. And prior to that, he wrote the book Drive, one of his many books. And Drive is about what motivates humans, what drives them. And I have a couple beefs with Mr. Pink. A lot of it because I feel like motivation is sometimes garbage. We're motivated and inspired for brief moments, but what is the thing that helps us continue when we don't feel motivated to do the thing, right? So Daniel Pink, the author and social scientist, posits that your people want three things. They want autonomy, they want mastery, and they want purpose. So this is the us collective as a part of our organizations. Our organizations are made up of individuals. And so that's why we have to go on the you journey first, and now to the us journey, what your people want. And you are part of this as well. And you also have to understand that this is what your people want, the people that you lead, what they want. Number one is autonomy. Man, when is the last time you said, I love being controlled by my boss. Love it. Said no one ever, right? But we do this to people all the time. We tap people on the shoulder, we put them into positions, we give them a project to solve, a problem to solve, and then we just don't get out of their way. And this is what I hear in organizations that are the impediment to optimizing performance. This is one of the big ones, is they just won't let me do my job. So if you are in that position, trust the people to do the thing that you have asked them to do. If you don't trust them, they shouldn't be in that position. And I have found that trusting people, that's the secret sauce. That builds that autonomy. Build a system where they can fail as well. Because a lot of times we have people walking on eggshells because they're so afraid to do something wrong. They're so afraid to mess up, so they don't try. They don't take any risks. And that's keeping your organization from performing optimally. So, trust is this thing that brings out not the worst, but the best in people. And I love this concept of trust. I have so many conversations, especially with cops. And if I asked you, well, what does trust look like to you? This is the answer I get every single time. I'll trust you if you earn it. If you earn my trust, I'll trust you if you earn it. But you got to earn my trust. Same with respect. Trust and respect, this thing. You got to earn it. You got to earn it. Okay. And I think that we should just give it freely. I have learned over the course of my career that giving things away gets more. As I have looked backwards on my career, the time that I gave more got more. Just think about that. Those random acts of kindness, the more that you give, it's weird how it sort of comes back to you. The same within our organizations, the more you give away. And here's what I mean in a tangible sense. There were so many examples I could give of trusting the officers. One was during the pandemic. Someone said, you know, we got to send people home. We got to have our detectives. Maybe they could work from home. And, you know, as you know, in this, you know, in law enforcement and first responders, you know, we don't do the whole work from home thing. That's not a thing, right? So someone's like, what do you mean work from home? Cops can't work from home. And we'll set them up with a computer, get a VPN. And someone said, we can't trust them to get their work done from home. We tried it. Right? So we set them up with computers. They went home and case closures went up by 300%. They killed it, right? It was crazy. And then someone said, we just can't trust them. And I can give you 20 more examples of where that happened, is where you trust people to do the thing. And they surprise you with their ingenuity. They do it. Giving things away gets more. And I'm going to give you the secret. There is one secret that I have learned. How do you know if you can trust someone? This is a bombshell. It's big. It's big. How do you know if you can trust someone? You got to trust them. There it is. You can tweet that too. That's how you know. Now, there will be some people who let you down. Okay, let's put those people over there. We've learned our lesson, right? Maybe we start incrementally trusting people. But that's how you learn to trust people. You trust them. Period. So that's what your people want. They want you to trust them with the thing that you have asked them to do. They want that desperately. They want mastery. And speaking to this room, you understand mastery. There is not one of you, if I said, you know, do you want to be good at your job? Not one of you will look at me and go, I kind of just want to be mediocre. I think that's all I'm really shooting for, you know? Maybe you do know some people like that. Maybe those are the actively disengaged. I don't know. But those are the people that we have to bring back. But people want mastery in everything that we do in our lives. You know, from our hobbies, you know, whoever of you golf, you want to master that stupid game. You never will, but you want to. That is your quest. That is what we do. We just want to get better at all the things we do. And the truth is that our people want that as well. So to provide them the level of mastery that they need to do the work in this ecosystem, you have to give them the tools and the equipment to get the job done. Training, education, tools, equipment. People forget about tools and equipment. I talk to so many places that are like, my computer never works, nothing ever works. I try, I'm trying, and nothing works. That is keeping them from mastering their work that you have asked them to do. So keep that in mind. Your people want that. They want to be able to do the job well. And the third that Daniel Pink says is purpose. And here is where I will push back a little bit on Daniel Pink. I love the concept of purpose. We all do. This is the concept that we want to do something that matters, something bigger than us. In this room, man, that's easy. All you have to do is think about your job and your mission. And there's your purpose right there. I can think of nothing more noble. Here's the problem with that as I see it, is that we're bogged down with 1,000 tiny cuts all the time, and we forget that purpose. So it's great when we can remind each other what our mission is, what our purpose is. It's a mighty mission. And we have to beat that drum for our people. But this surmises that in the morning, when you wake up and your alarm goes off, this beam of light comes and picks you up out of bed. And you put your cape on and you go do the work in Homeland Security. And that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. That's great if it did. And if it does for you, amazing, you are winning at life, right? But the rest of us, oh man, it's a little bit more difficult. So I think that we need to concentrate on little p, which is mine, not Daniel Pink's, little p. And I think the little p is the stuff that we do every single day just to move the ball down the field. That's a sporty ball reference. Just to move the ball down the field, the little things that we do that make it better, the thing that we thwarted, right? The project that we're working on, did we do our very best today? And by the way, sometimes little p purpose and doing your best is honestly just showing up. Because you've got a lot going on at home. Maybe you're caring for a loved one. Maybe you're raising kids. Who knows? Whatever your plight is, illness in your family, whatever that may be, sometimes your best is just putting your pants on and getting there. That's little p purpose. You did it. You got there, right? And that goes back to the book, the 4 agreements. Always do your best. If you're always doing your best, that best fluctuates from day to day. So I love the concept of celebrating the little victories that we have. Little victories. And maybe they're not aligned to some major purpose, but you're just making your world better, right? They did this study on a diner, a guy who worked in a diner. I can't remember, I wish I could cite it. Oof. And basically this was a short order cook in a diner. And the restaurant was closed up as it typically is, where the kitchen's in the back, you can't see the front, and vice versa. So they changed up the whole configurement of the diner. And they opened it up so the cook could see the people eating in the dining room. And they asked the cook, after 2 weeks of this new configurement, what was that like? Did it change anything for you? And he said, yes. Man, when I came to work before, it was mundane. I was just, flipping the flapjacks, frying the bacon. Seeing people enjoying the food that I am making over a cup of coffee, laughing, connecting, that was so cool for me. It just made me really appreciate what I do. Little p, purpose, right? So that's the stuff. And celebrating what didn't happen. Hey guys, we just thwarted an attack. We did something pretty cool. We just developed something. Let's celebrate that. Nothing happened. But we don't do that either. But that's what motivates people. So they continue to do the work. That's where the optimism comes in, is that I have the power to change things. It's not idealism. Everything is going to be okay. Everything is great. No, here's your shit sandwich. You have to eat it, but maybe you could choke it down with something delicious. I don't know. That's what I'm talking about. But we have to inspire our people to stay motivated in the way that it continues into optimal performance. Because I'm telling you right now, this is a disease. This is the actively disengaged and the disengaged. The people who are like, I've got 742 days, 6 hours, and 13 seconds till I can retire. The people who are just out of F's to give, and we know exactly who they are. They're just showing up and going through the motions. This is the biggest threat to our organizations when it comes to doing the work that threatens our homeland. This is a big threat right here, apathy. It's a disease, and we have to fight it. I would rather you walk into my office mad, yelling, whatever. Why? Because it means you still care, right? And that is what we have to fight, because when people check out, man, it's hard to get them back. And that's what we call the dog that didn't bark. When people don't offer their thoughts, their opinions, their ideas, and yes, even their complaints, you are losing value. That is genuinely the opposite of empowerment. Powerlessness. Your organization suffers. So here's what you need to do as leaders. Seek out an additional point of view. I think this was the lesson that I had to learn, midway through my tenure as chief, where I was trying to make changes, and being that visionary and making people uncomfortable. And I didn't communicate sometimes the why behind the do, nor did I seek out an alternative viewpoint from the police department. So here's an idea that I have. Here's a system I want to put in place. Seek out alternative points of view and invite people to throw spears. Here's my idea, throw spears. When they do that, you can see the obstacles that are in front of you now that you hadn't been able to see before, because this is the diversity of thought. This is why bringing in people who are contrarians are helpful to you and to the organization. So seek out an alternative point of view. Determine who's not in the room, who isn't weighing in on this idea, on this decision, on this problem. Or worse, who is in the room but isn't speaking up? For what reason? Why are they stifled? Do they have a tormentor in the room? Do they not feel confident? What is it? Find out. You need the voices from everyone. For the organization to raise, you have to have the voices of everyone. And as a leader, it's your job. And when you ask them, man, I've got a problem, and I think that if we all come together and try to solve this problem, I'm telling you, they just surprise you. with their thoughts and their creativity. Because the truth of the matter is, leadership is not about you. It's simply not. You're getting work done through others. You need to love your people more than you love your position. Full stop. And that word in there, love, that is purposeful. Leading from the heart. And it might make people uncomfortable, especially the traditionalists and the no crying in police work or in homeland security. But that's the truth. Think about the best leaders that you've ever had. You would walk through broken glass for them because they love their people more than their position. That's what optimizes performance. And that's what keeps people down. So what happens when you fall out of love with your position? Even with your people happens, right? This book is called The Second Mountain by David Brown. And I read it right after I retired, which was perfect timing. The book is it's a metaphor for every one of us has their first mountain in their lives. And that first mountain is very goal-oriented, very achievement-oriented. Maybe, you're trying to work up the ladder, you're focused on your career, raising your family, you're climbing that mountain. But then you come to a place in time in your life where you reach the second mountain. So you've hit that pinnacle of the first one, wherever that might be for you, whatever that looks like, that success. And then you take all the wisdom and the knowledge that you've learned on that first mountain and you apply it to your second mountain. And when I read this, it made sense of what I was trying to do. I'm no longer in an organization, but I'm trying to feed you what I learned from other organizations to make your organizations better. I'm going around trying to prevent the next mass shooting. I'm not doing a very good job at it, I know. I'm trying to make people prepared for the unthinkable. What's the worst thing that could happen? And I realized this is my second mountain. So those 5 people who were killed in my mass shooting, didn't die in vain. This is my second mountain, right? And so this is from his book. I loved this quote because I'm sitting here telling you to be optimistic about your jobs, and to do the things that don't hold you back. Trying to make the business case for it. And yet the realism is there are going to be times where you fall out of love with this job that you are doing for all of the reasons that we talked about, the 1,000 tiny cuts, right? So this is why you have to build structure. The key to optimizing your competitive edge begins with action items. A friend of mine called me 2 days ago, Ryan, and he said, I just landed, and he said, talk to me about setbacks. And I said, buddy, you're gonna have to give me a little more context than that. And he said, all right, I'll tell you. He said, we're trying, they can't have children, he and his wife, they can't have kids, and so they're trying to become foster parents so they could eventually adopt. And he said, we missed the deadline to take the foster parenting class. Okay, what else? Well, no, our bathroom is still a mess because we're getting it redone. So we're working off one bathroom and it's absolute chaos. Okay, what else? My diet and my workout regime is crap. Okay, what else you got? And he goes down this list, and I said, Ryan, write all those things down. Write all those things down that you just told me. Cross out the things you can't control. Okay, the countertop is on back order for the bathroom, big deal, you deal with it. But all the things you just told me, you missed the deadline signing up for the parenting class, that's you. Where's your structure? Why did you miss that? Your workouts? You're missing your routine because you're back in the office. Since COVID, it's been 1.5 years that you've been back at the office. Where's your routine? You need to build the structures in your life because when everything else seems like it's falling apart, and listen, sitting in here for 2 days, it feels like the world is falling apart, right? So how do we keep going? Well, you have to build structures in your life to keep you motivated so that you can perform and still do the work that you need to do. Now, this is where you will glaze over momentarily. If I see any eyes roll in the back of your head, I will come punch you in the throat, and I'm not a violent person. What does it mean to build structure in our lives so when everything else falls apart, you keep your center? Well, it looks a lot like this. It looks a lot like this. Stillness. Just be quiet for a minute. You will begin to make sense of everything that you're going through if you just stay quiet. I had an officer, I love this guy because he was trying to start a meditation movement in our police department, and people were calling him granola and making fun of him, and he didn't care because he's a courageous disruptor. And I said, don't call it meditation, just call it tactical breathing and everyone will be into it. And they were. Just throw the word tactical in front of something. Get your tactical sleep, get your tactical whatever. So we teach officers to do that all the time. Slow your breathing down in the field, you know. Whew. You can benefit from this when you're about to go into a meeting or have a courageous conversation with someone, or you wake up just 10 minutes earlier and you just sit in silence. I don't know what it is about it, but it puts everything into perspective. Just quiet. Don't underestimate that. If you aren't doing that, it's the most simple thing that you can do to build into your life. Just 5 minutes of silence. Just let your thoughts go wherever they go. Exercise. I am not asking you to join a CrossFit gym. If you're doing that, great. What I'm saying is the proven benefits of exercise show that after a 20-minute walk, your brain lights up, the creativity, you make better decisions just after a 20-minute brisk walk. So if you're stuck or if you're feeling terrible, I'm telling you, no one ever felt worse after a walk. I'm not gonna say it solves all of your problems, but you take a brisk 20, 30-minute walk, man, it puts things into perspective for you. You feel better. And there's a reason behind that. It releases all the good chemicals. And this is how you optimize and you build structures. So when the rest of it falls apart, you stay with these structures. The third is sleep. Man, we are finally getting to a time now where the science is showing us, I think we actually believe it now, that ridiculousness of when people say, oh, I do great on 4 to 5 hours of sleep, that's all I need. No, that's complete BS. It's complete BS. The science shows you that. Sleep is a superpower. But, you know, everyone talks about morning routines, get up, you know, meditate, do your cold plunge. Actually, it's your evening routines that affect your sleep the most. Turning off your little scrolling on your phone before you go to bed, put it away, right? All of these things will help you create structures in your life. So whether you do all of these right now, awesome, winning at life, you're building structures, you're great. Just be 1% better. Do one of these things. When you're feeling overwhelmed, do one of these things. Try to get good sleep. I promise you, it will change the way that you see the world the next day with 8 hours of solid sleep. Science behind that too, all of it. This is where I'm bringing in positivity, ever so slightly. Because when we are feeling less than optimistic about our lives, about our jobs, about all the things that we have to do, and we feel like we're Sisyphus, forever pushing that boulder up the hill, we need moments that we can find throughout our day. And the best part about this, about positive emotion, this is positive psychology. There's a whole field of study devoted to positive psychology, which basically studies what is right with you, not what is wrong with you. And what they have learned are all the things that you've probably already heard about gratitude, right? Just spending that time waking up in the morning and going, I woke up on the right side of the dirt today. That's amazing. I am so grateful for that. The point about this is that we get so busy in our negativity. Our alarm goes off, maybe we hit snooze once, whatever it may be. If you're like me, I'm like, I can sleep for 4 more minutes, just 4 more minutes, and then I have to get up, right? That is creating a deficit immediately at the beginning of your day, which sets you into negative emotion. Now you're running late because you have so much to do and you just didn't get out of bed when your alarm went off, right? So, sets you on the trajectory of negativity. And yet, throughout your day, you can very quickly rewire your brain. Over time, you can do this, and it has been proven by purposely, consciously doing these things. You can't tell me that you, in a moment of funk or whatever it is that you're in that is keeping you down, lacking optimism, that you cannot go find inspiration. For me, it's just maybe reading a couple quotes that inspire me. Awe. Man, I experienced awe this morning, and I loathe the word awesome because it's so overused, and I love the study of awe and flow. And this morning, you know, when the national anthem went off and right out my hotel, I could see that flag flying, I had this moment of pride and awe. You can find those things if you deliberately look for them, but we don't. We keep our heads down, we're grinding, we keep our heads in our phones, we're not communicating with each other. You can find serenity, interest, hope, amusement. Call a pal who makes you laugh, walk over to their cubicle. Do whatever it is that you need to do to find that, but I promise you, if you choose, and the deliberate word there is choice. It is a choice. You can be negative or you can be optimistic, and this positivity, these steps will bring you there. I mean, just think about random acts of kindness. It's so funny because before I get to this, think about, have you ever been in a drive-thru to get your coffee and someone has paid for your coffee? Oh my gosh. The first time that ever happened to me, I was elated. That was like the best feeling ever. You know what's an even better feeling? Doing it for someone else. I couldn't wait. I was like, oh, I am gonna pay for coffee for the person behind me. Of course, I looked in the rearview mirror to make sure it wasn't a full car, because I'm blonde, not stupid. But I was like, I'm gonna pay for their coffee. Did they just get one thing? Okay. But anyway, after I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, that feels even better just by giving. It's just someone who doesn't expect anything. All of that, but you have to be deliberate about it. So I'm asking you to be your own disruptor, to get out of your own way, and to find that positivity, which leads to optimism, which allows you to do the work that you need to do. So I want to tell you lessons from my boxing career. My boxing career lasted one day. So I was a commander, my police department, and a sergeant walked in and he said, hey, I'm doing a charity boxing event, and we would like to pit you against another female commander from another jurisdiction. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so fun. I heard the words charity and boxing, and I was like, we're gonna have big clown gloves, and it's gonna be amazing. So I said, absolutely, I am in. This was a big county-wide thing. My chief was gonna be against their chief, the state's attorney against, I mean, it was big, it was big. There was like a big old auditorium that all the bouts were set up. So we start doing the marketing for it. So this is a marketing picture. I've never boxed before in my entire life, right? So they're just like, just pose in front of, okay, got it, all right. So then I start hearing rumblings from across the river in the county that my opponent is training. And I was like, oh, there's no way she's not like actually training, right? So I would send her a picture of my wine glass and be like, hey, I'm training for our bout, just to see what she would say. She would send me back of her martini. She's like, me too. And I was like, oh, we're good. We're not like actually training, right? But then it starts like, they're like, no, I think that other department is like really training to kick our butts. And I was like, oh man, I better get some lessons. So 2 days before the bout, I asked one of my guys who's a boxer, I'm like, you teach me how to throw a punch and like do the blocking thing and whatever I need to learn in 2 lessons. Just teach me how to box. I was like, how hard can it be, right? So comes the day of the bout. And there's that promotional video. Man, I look like I know what I'm doing, right? So I want to show you a picture from the day of the boxing bout. 3 rounds, 3 minutes each. That's it. When you told me that, man, I was like, my cardio was kind of good in those days, and I was like, 3 minutes? I can do anything for 3 minutes, right? Oh, friends, if you have ever boxed, this is the picture I want to show you. The picture that was snapped of me in the boxing ring. Please take note that my glove is backwards. Like, I'm literally like that. Let me show you the first thing that happened. Now, by the way, I've got my front row. My front row is there. My kids are there. My personal board of directors, they are all on the sidelines. They are cheering for me, right? And the bell dings, boom. And this is the first thing that happens. She walks up to me, pow, punches me square in the face. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? So for 3 rounds, I am running around this ring. Let me tell you, those of you, law enforcement, what are we trained? Cover and conceal. Cover and conceal. You find the thing, like in this room, I found all the things I'm gonna hide behind and the people. Cover and conceal, right? In a boxing ring, there is nowhere to hide when you are getting beat up. I was trying to hide behind the ref. So 3 rounds I went through this. I lost, by the way. I don't know if I needed to mention that. She totally beat me up. So that was great. But The reason I tell you this other ridiculous story is because this is what it looks like. Now let me tell you, that, that last picture where she's punching me in the face, that was on the front page of the newspaper the following day. Ridicule. It was harsh. I walked into my police department and there was a cop who had the newspaper, and he looked at it and he looked at me and he went, oof. I went, yeah, I know. And then he said, man, I give you credit though, I never would have gotten that ring, you know. And I was like, oh, thank you. So I there was my silver lining. But the metaphor for that ridiculously stupid story is that I didn't prepare. And these are all of the punches, that we are getting. These are all of the threats, and these are not all of them, but preparation is key. I failed to prepare on that day for what I thought was just a fun little charity event, and fortunately, made up for it in other ways in the police department with preparation, but, that was a personal moment where I just felt completely humiliated. And so the lesson there is that there's all kinds of punches coming at all of you, right? And you've got to prepare, and you got to get in that ring. And there's also people sitting on the sidelines that are your tormentors. They're the ones who are doing nothing of value themselves, but sitting in the cheap seats, saying, how you could have done better, or, ridiculing you from the sidelines. Let that noise fall away. They are not your front row. You pay attention to that front row. So here's the biggest lesson that I have learned in my 30 years in law enforcement and now beyond in doing the work that I'm doing, that this V word right here is the key to everything, especially as leaders sitting in this room. When you are able to say, please don't let me fail, don't let us fail. When you are able to say, I don't know. When you are able to say, help me. That builds trust with your people. And man, I'm telling you, they will run through brick walls for you. But we have to practice that vulnerability, and it's hard. Here's where I learned it. I learned it after my mass shooting. This is Adam Miller. He was shot, one of the 5 officers shot. He lost his eye on that day. And he was up with his rifle on scope. And that bullet hit his rifle, and the shrapnel went into his eye. If he wasn't up on scope, that bullet would have gone right through his head. And he had 5 surgeries. He's got a glass eye, and it's got the APD patch on it, and that's so badass. And on this day, I was giving him the Blue Medal of Valor, all of our police officers. And I grabbed his face, and I remember telling him, I am so grateful that you are still here with us. And his mom snapped that picture, and it is one of my most prized possessions. But that's not how I learned the lesson of vulnerability. It was 2 days after the shooting. Shooting happened on a Friday, and on a Sunday, we had to go to a prayer vigil. And I hadn't slept in 2 days. My officers were still in the hospital. And we were dealing with the grieving families, trying to make sense of all of this. And you got to go do the thing, right? So I went to this prayer vigil. I leave the prayer vigil, the stage of the prayer vigil, and everybody in my city and beyond was there supporting our police department and our victims. And I see this officer, and he's standing on the perimeter, just like this. And I was walking in my squad car, and I kind of made a beeline to him, and I said, hey, thanks for being here. I just want to let you know I really appreciate you being here. And then it hit me. I saw him the day of the shooting. He wasn't involved in the back and forth gunfire, but he was there. I saw him. And I said, hey, you were there, right? And he had to suit up. Everybody had to suit up, get back to work the day of the shooting, unless they were involved in the shooting or pulled the trigger, right? And there he was. And I said, I saw you that day, at the shooting. I said, are you okay? This might look familiar to you. He was standing like this. And by the way, let me just paint the picture of what this guy looks like. He's a Marine, high and tight. It's February, he's got short sleeve shirt on, and he's got his uniform shirt tailored to his biceps to make him look more muscular. I love that. So he's standing there, and I said, are you okay? And he did this. Yeah, I'm fine. Look familiar to many of you? Yeah. I've seen that a lot over the years, right? And I said to him, Sully, I locked in his eyes. I said, are you okay? That man fell into my arms sobbing right there in front of everyone at that prayer vigil, in front of his comrades. And it was in that moment that I knew that we were going to be okay. Leadership is sometimes overrated. Sometimes it's the first follower that actually starts the movement. And that's exactly what happened. And I will never think tears are weak. No more. My father, before me, was a police officer, a Marine. He's the one who told me there's no crying in police work. My dad killed himself. I think I would have got a clue. I didn't figure it out until this day, and here is what I have learned about all of us. You cannot get to courage without walking through vulnerability. We're brave, that's cool. We're brave, we can run towards things. But that kind of courage that Sully exhibited that day actually caused more officers to break down, which is exactly what was needed in that moment, to go get help. He encouraged officers to walk in and speak with a mental health professional. Most people think vulnerability is weakness. That's what I used to think, right? And I had to learn that lesson over and over again. That first lesson, that stupid story, of just the being vulnerable with that guy in the backyards. But I had to learn as a leader to be vulnerable, and I didn't associate the two, right? Leadership is vulnerability, and honestly, it's the cornerstone of confidence, and we are able to be vulnerable. It's risky. I know it's risky. It's risky to put yourself out there. It's risky to get in the ring and get punched over and over again while everyone is watching. That is risky, right? Man, but it is worth it. It is absolutely worth it, because here is what I know for sure. At the end of our one wild and precious life, this is why I know it for sure, because the longest study on longevity that has ever been conducted has been conducted by Harvard University. It's been going on for 85 years. And here's what they found. All the things that probably are recognizable to you. I wish I would have worked less. In the study of longevity, they've interviewed people for 85 years at the end of their life. They have millions of participants in this. And here are the top 2 things that people say at the end of their lives. 2. 2 is, I wish I would have lived a life true to myself rather than that of what others expected of me. That's where that being yourself, being your authentic self, dropping the mask, being perfectly you. So many people have stayed in jobs, relationships that did not serve them because they did it because someone expected it of them. Miserable people walking around because they don't have the courage to leave. And I'm not saying that it's easy, it's not, but that's the data. That's what people are saying at the end of their wild and precious life. They wish they would have done the thing true to themselves. But number one, human connection above all else. That's what matters. You sitting in this room, people networking with their cohorts, rekindling relationships, catching up. That's the stuff that matters. That's the stuff that people regret at their end of their lives that they didn't do, because I promise you, your titles will fall away. That's why I'm still in the middle of my existential crisis. What matters are the people that you have, the connections that you have built, the people that you can call when you are metaphorically on that bridge. Who do you call? When you leave here, I want you to think about that. Can't be your spouse. Can't be your spouse. Who do you call when you are standing on that bridge? Who do you call? Those people. They matter. And if there are people you're like, oh, you know what, I don't feel comfortable calling them, then you need to rebuild that relationship, because that's what matters. Show up for people, your people. Show up for your people and don't look away. Show up for this mission and don't look away. There is so much work to be done here. We've heard it over the last 2 days. And there is a courage formula, and it's simply this. I started out with this. This is what I use in my personal life, also in my professional life. Remember, what is the worst thing that can happen? So as you are about to embark on something in your life, maybe it's a promotion, maybe you want to change jobs. What is the worst thing that could possibly happen in pursuit of that thing that you want to do? I want you to sit with the worst possible thing that could happen. Leaving a relationship, starting a relationship, whatever that might be. Some people think I'm inviting bad juju into the universe by saying, what's the worst thing that could happen? But you of all people know that that's what we deal with, the worst thing that could happen. Sit with it. Part 2, are you willing to accept it? People, first responders, they put their uniform on every day. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? They don't go home. Are they willing to accept it? They better. They better, or they don't deserve to wear that uniform, right? Are you willing to accept it? Part 3, now, think about if you do that thing that is scary and risky. What is the best thing that could possibly happen? Now, proceed. You've already sat with the worst possible thing that can happen, and here's the truth. Most of the time, the worst thing hardly ever happens. So now, you focus on the best thing. You focus on the goal. You do not focus on the obstacle. And that is the key, because there is a moment, there is one moment where you are sitting on the edge of something daring and scary and creative and powerful and perhaps wonderful, but you blink. Because that little voice inside your head says, don't do that, don't get in the ring, don't do it, you could be ridiculed, don't take that risk. You blink. It is that moment between you and remarkable. It is that moment that most people blink. So everything, all the work and preparation and daring and luck are nothing compared with the ability to not blink. And the work that you are doing, man, we can't let you blink. You've got to keep moving. So whatever from today you can take from this to optimize structure, to optimize performance, to keep you in the game, we need you out there doing this work, every single one of you, no matter how you contribute to this ecosystem of homeland security and defense. We need you to keep doing what you're doing, and we need you to not blink. So your call to optimization. Remember, knowledge without application is nothing, so do one thing that resonated with you today to become 1% better. Remember, successful people believe that the future is better and that you have the power to make it so. That's optimism right there, wrapped up. Build a structure to combat apathy. Best idea always wins. Vulnerability leads to human connection. Decide if you can accept the worst thing that could happen and proceed, but focus on the goal. And finally, be a disruptor. You are already disruptors in our field. So thank you so much. I honor each and every one of you for what you do. If there's ever any way I can support you, or you think there are some things that I've missed or things that I should tackle, please throw spears. Throw spears at me. This is where you can find me, and I'll do anything I can to support you. Thank you for doing what you do.